Hi, everybody. My name is Cassandra Solano. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of California and a life and relationship coach. Welcome if this is your first time checking out one of my videos. I have a ton of educational content here, and I also share a little bit about my life. We just had Halloween last night, and as a parent of neurodivergent HSP empath kids, I always give myself permission to duck out, to leave early, to make a quick exit and honor the needs of my kids. And last night was just one of those nights. One of my kiddos had a really cool costume that a lot of people wanted to touch and to be close around them with. And 4 houses and a trick-or-treating, they had enough, and we bounced and went to a different neighborhood and did some one-on-one time after we kind of came home and cuddled for a little bit. And I know it's so important for our little ones that they get that time to regulate, they get that downtime, and that we are regulated enough or grounded and centered and calm in our bodies enough to offer that anchor point to them, so we can offer something called co-regulation for them. I'm going to shift into talking about co-regulation. So co-regulation is something that we are all supposed to experience, but a lot of us unfortunately don't. From the time that we're in utero to when we're babies and little kids. We never stop needing co-regulation though. And even if you didn't get the co-regulation that you needed when you were a baby or a young kid, it isn't too late to get co-regulation and to heal your nervous system as an adult. So co-regulation is when a young developing nervous system, or when in middle-aged, right, or teenage nervous system gets soothing and support and calming and feels safe from another body, from another nervous system that is regulated. Definitely co-regulate with animals. We can co-regulate with nature. We can co-regulate with, a higher power, if that's part of your belief system. For a lot of us, our first experience of co-regulation or lack of is with our primary caregivers. So ideally, we should have received this co-regulation where a grounded, centered, calm nervous system of our parent or caregiver was able to attune to us or anticipate our needs as babies or young children and stay calm even in times of stress. This could look like we fall down and get a boo-boo, and our caregiver sees that we got hurt, but they also recognize, a bone hasn't been broken here. There might not even be a scratch, and the caregiver is able to maintain their own internal sense of calm. So even though we might feel scared because we fell off of a little slide or, fell off of our bike and got a scratch, our caregivers are able to maintain their inner sense of calm that helps us to calm down. And our caregivers serve as a centering point or an anchor point for us to connect with, to help us calm down as well. Now, what about when we don't have regulated caregivers? What about when we have caregivers that are carrying their own unhealed trauma? What about when we have caregivers that are carrying unhealed intergenerational wounds? What about when we have caregivers who didn't have regulated parents or caregivers themselves? Because our nervous systems develop off of our caregivers' nervous systems. Our caregivers' nervous systems serve as the blueprint to our little baby, our childhood nervous systems. We literally cannot grow up and become a more regulated person than our caregivers were, unless you maybe, spent a lot of time with a coach or an aunt or something like that that was very regulated, that was able to give you a different experience to imprint on your nervous system, they were able to give you a different blueprint. So if we didn't have caregivers that were regulated because of their own unhealed trauma, because of their inherited trauma, our nervous systems are literally being shaped like theirs. They are the blueprint for how our nervous systems develop. And this impacts how we are able to handle stress, how easily we get stressed out or triggered. And that affects how we are perceiving situations, how safe we feel in the world, how safe we feel to connect with and build intimate relationships with other people, our self-confidence. It affects everything. Did I say infects? It does. I mean, truly, a dysregulated nervous system, it's kind of like an infection, but it's something that we can heal. So it affects everything, is what I was trying to say. We can heal this even if our blueprints that our nervous system developed off of when we were young weren't that great. We can still heal it through co-regulating and finding healthy adult relationships. And for some of us, it starts with a therapist, a coach, a 12-step sponsor, people that we meet at, in a church group, online support group of some sort, where there are other people around us that are centered, that are grounded, and that are regulated. And this gives our nervous system a chance to co-regulate and to heal, to form new neural pathways and new connections. So co-regulation is needed to self-regulate. This is kind of the second thing I want to talk about today. If you didn't get the adequate co-regulation that you needed from your caregivers, from your parents, then that was the blueprint that your nervous system was based off of, and you were going to really struggle to self-regulate, because we needed to see parents or caregivers that had the ability to self-regulate themselves. So back to my example of, you fell off your bike and yes, you got a scratch, but it was more scary than anything, and you're crying. Is your parent or caregiver, first of all, around and noticing, come out of the house and attune to you? And secondly, how did they respond? Were they able to maintain their inner sense of peace and groundedness and provide you that safe anchor for you to calm down and to connect with? Or were you met with rejection and you're being too sensitive, you're not bleeding, you're fine, right? That's not co-regulation. Or perhaps your caregiver swung to the other extreme. Instead of being dismissive, they were very hyper attuned. We kind of think of like a helicopter parent here, where they were like, and then all this adrenaline and cortisol was released in their system because they're easily stressed, and all of a sudden they're amped up, and you were here and now you're here, and you're both stressed and amped up. This is also not co-regulation. That is also not safety. I just want to invite you to think about not the most traumatic, horrible thing that happened to you when you were kids. This is just educational content. It's YouTube. But maybe just bring to your mind something like a small injury, or maybe one time you had a scary dream, or maybe it was one of your siblings that you saw something happen to. And just see if you can feel, how did my parent respond? Or caregiver respond? Were they grounded and centered and regulated and provided co-regulation? Were they dismissive? Or did they themselves become hyper aroused and freak out and panic, and then it just like blew up the situation and made it worse? Anger also can count in like this hyper aroused state. So they have all this adrenaline and cortisol going through their system and cannot offer co-regulation once they're in that state. The third part is that because without co-regulation, we don't learn how to self-regulate, we can really struggle as, we grow up and we have parents or caregivers that say things like, why can't you just calm down? Or it's not that big of a deal. And we can have a really difficult time containing our big feelings and emotion and kind of be labeled as dramatic or attention seeking. Or on the other hand, we can learn to suppress all of our needs and our big emotions because we've learned that like no one's there maybe, or it gets too scary if I express these things, and we repress or push down our needs. And it might look like we're self-regulating because we're being a good girl or a good boy, being quiet and calm, and not complaining or needing anything. But at that point, we haven't really become a child that can regulate. We're just kind of suppressing all of our needs and living in a nervous system shutdown mode. Sadly, a lot of us take these dysregulated nervous systems into our adult lives and into our adult relationships. And that has a dramatic impact on everything on our adult lives, from career to relationships to parenting. Just to bring it around to my story about Halloween last night, which is that I noticed like my parents got a little distressed and concerned because I was like, we got to go, bye. And I was able to put their concern aside and realize like it's not my job to make them feel good, make them feel okay about my decision. I was just like, my kids had enough and we've got to go. Because me staying centered and grounded and creating safety and boundaries for my kiddo to come home and sit with me and watch some cartoons for a little bit and chill before we went back to trick-or-treating, and to connect and to co-regulate was the number one priority in that moment. Regardless if I wanted to stay longer or I wish I had a kid that could just mob around with a group of 15 kids trick-or-treating and not be bothered by it. No, it didn't matter. But it takes, somebody who is self-aware, someone who is intentionally trying to consciously parent to make these decisions. And in a lot of big, but quite often in a lot of small ways, these small moments, right, are the ones that really impact our nervous system development, which impacts everything else in our life as we get older. So I hope that was supportive. I hope this was helpful. I hope you understand a little bit more about what co-regulation is and is not, and the ways that it could be impacting your life today. If you didn't get the experience of co-regulation that you needed, that you deserved, that all children should have, and sadly, a lot of us don't get. And, again, I'm not in the let's blame, our caregivers, mom and dad game. I just think it's really important to understand the facts and what actually happened. So now we know like what we need to do. And I know my parents are still carrying around a boatload of unhealed, unprocessed trauma in their nervous systems, and can have compassion for that, while also understanding the importance of naming and healing the impact of them not healing their stuff had on me and had on their ability or, struggle with parenting me. And I definitely know I am not a perfect parent and don't have a perfectly regulated nervous system 24/7. I apologize to my kids at least once a week for not being attuned or for getting angry or upset faster than I'd like to. And I hope that they are even better parents than I am one day. I hope that you find someone safe to co-regulate with. If you're feeling like, hey, I'd like to chat with you, I'd like to see how we can work together so I can get that healing co-regulating experience, so I can reach my goals, change how I'm showing up in relationships, live a more conscious life, reach out to me. My website is right here, cassandrasolano.com. You can see all of my current offers, or you can go right to cassandrasolano.com/coaching to apply to work with me one-on-one. I currently do have some one-on-one openings. All right, everybody, take care and we'll talk soon.